Okay, good morning, afternoon, evening, or wherever you are seeing this class. This is week 10 of your Foundations class 7305. I am your professor, Dr. Jace, and I have the Kansas Library Association Conference coming up later this week. So, if I am a little slow getting back to some of you all, it is because I'm again at another conference, and I'll actually also be at another conference next week. So, in the meantime, of course, I have a job to serve my students, and I plan to continue to do that. So, there may be some delayed responses, but you will get responses. But the policy still holds true. If you don't hear from me within about 48 hours, just send me another email or send me another message, as I may have gotten wrapped up into something. I have looked, as you all hopefully know, your literature reviews were due on October the 21st unless you contacted me and let me know that there was some sort of issue that was going to prevent you from completing your literature review. And by the way, for those of you who I did grant extensions to, yes, you will need to remind me that I did so. I do have a lot of students, and I have a lot of different students saying a lot of different things, and different people have things going on in their lives. So you need to make sure that, you tell me that on such and such a date by email or by phone or whatever, I granted you some sort of extension. And please do not get carried away with those extensions. I do want your literature reviews when you can get them to me. So I will hopefully at the conference, what I'll be doing at the Kansas Library Association conference, I will not be attending sessions. I'll actually be working an exhibits booth. So that should hopefully give me some time to actually grade papers, because usually at those exhibit booths, you do not have somebody in your face all the time. So when people are in concurrent sessions or whatever the case may be, I am hoping to do some grading at that time on those literature reviews. Your timeline assignments are due this coming weekend, and if you and that is my phone. Let me do a pause. I'm sorry. Okay, so that was a little messy. Sorry about that, but that was a very important phone call. I don't know where I left off, although I do think that I just said something that wasn't correct. So, and this name tag is all kinds of crooked. The timeline, which is your next assignment, is actually due on November 1st, and you'll see that in Canvas. I think I just said it was due over the weekend, but that's actually something for my other class. So I apologize for that. Dr. Chase is being a little silly. I don't want you guys to be worried. Yes, the timeline is due on November 1st, not this coming weekend, October 28th. You have more time than that. Sorry about that. Got that clarified. You guys have that time. So, aside from that, I'm not going to, and by the way, I have gone through the discussion board, the general comments and questions discussion board, and I don't think that there was anything that was on there that I necessarily need to bring up to the entire class. So I'm going to bypass that. What I am going to do is go right into just sharing a few of my thoughts about this week's subject matter. So this week's subject matter is about digital media and how it is affecting libraries. Now, of course, digital media is leading to the creation of digital libraries. So, I wasn't too off base by saying digital libraries, because that is one of the effects that digital media is having. It's giving us a chance to create digital libraries in ways that we have not in the past. But that's not particularly what I wanted to just kind of talk about. What I do want to talk about are my concerns basically for archival materials in particular. And I don't have an archival background, But if any of you do, you actually may be able to teach me something. So if you want to mention something in the discussion board, I would love to see. By the way, you don't have a required discussion board this week. So I need to be careful about mentioning things in the discussion board. I just mean if you want to mention something in the optional discussions, in the general comments, even if that's where you want to put it. But if someone has a archival background and can school me, I would actually appreciate it, and I would share that information with the rest of the class. But I've spoken to some archivists about what's going to happen with the use of email and some of these other things, which I would also consider email to be a form of digital media. I think that in the past, one thing that archivists would always have and preserve would be paper copies of letters and things like that. And that stuff is very important. I've seen archival materials where they archive the letters of civil rights leaders. I've seen archival materials with archived correspondences during wartime, and those things were on paper. So they were things that people, for instance, you're related to somebody who's off and fighting for the Union in the Civil War, and that person writes back home, and you take that correspondence and you put it in a Bible or you put it in a family photo album or whatever. And then years later, after you have passed, your family may donate those letters and other materials to an archives. And I think it's going to be very tricky actually knowing what to do as far as getting some of these same types of correspondences archived in the digital era. Now, I have had archivists tell me that there are plans in place, that this is something that the archives field has been aware of for a while, and they are doing things to try to remedy this situation and make sure that emails also become archival materials. And then also, of course, I shouldn't say of course, for those of you who don't know, if you work for a government agency, a lot of times your emails are subject to public records requests, freedom of information requests, and I'm very careful about what I say to people with my UMKC and with my University of Missouri emails, because anyone can look those up. Any email that I send out to a student, the news media, or anyone else, any private citizen can file a freedom of information request and try to have my emails released to the public. So I have to be very careful about that. But I also think that that's going to take care of correspondence between government workers and other people as we are archiving materials. I do believe that we shouldn't have any problems archiving some emails and like some work and government emails, and making sure that those are available for future generations, for future researchers if needed. There are going to be times when historians, for instance, are probably going to need to know what was being said between Johnny Q, who works for, I don't know, who is the assistant to the mayor or something, and what that Johnny person did as far as corresponding with a citizen about a citizen's issue. So we are going to have access to those types of materials in the future. But I do fear that we are going to lose a lot in the digital age as far as correspondence that could be very useful for researchers, for historians, for people researching families and things like that. I don't know where these email correspondences are actually going to go at the end of our lives. And that could be a good thing. In a lot of ways, it will be a good thing. There are probably some emails that I've sent that I never want anyone to see. And if those are on my private server, hopefully they'll never see them. But for these other, for research purposes, we are losing a lot of information. It's kind of like how they say with every oral history well, that every person is an oral history, and every time somebody dies without having their oral history recorded, we just lose so much history when that happens. So that is a concern that I have in the digital age. Another concern that I have in the digital age and with digital media that I just want to share really quick, because again, I want to try to keep this under 15 minutes, and I'm coming on that right now. So apparently, and I forget the hashtag, but there's now also a kind of crowdsource thing going on via Twitter for sharing articles and library content, through, it's kind of like a crowdsourced interlibrary loan program that they've done with a hashtag on Twitter. And I'm very concerned about that because I am very concerned about copyright. And I do think that librarians maybe are not respecting copyright and intellectual property as much as they should. And the reason I am a big advocate for making sure that people's intellectual property rights are respected is because I do feel that intellectual property law, and by intellectual property, I'm talking about copyright, I'm talking about patents, I'm talking about trade secrets, those sorts of things. I believe that the motivation to create new knowledge and to create and invent new content, new inventions, and that sort of thing, part of the motivation there is to be able to take ownership of it and make a profit or make some kind of money or make some kind of career advancement off of it. And I do feel that we may be in a bad situation if intellectual property is disrespected and if intellectual property law is disrespected to the point where artists and inventors and writers just don't feel motivated to create intellectual property because they are not going to see a return on creating that intellectual property. So when we have crowdsourced efforts to do interlibrary loan through Twitter and just identify who needs what and send it to them regardless of, well, just regardless of what the intellectual property concerns are, I do feel that we are possibly shooting ourselves in the foot because in one sense, yes, publish or perish will always be a thing in higher ed, but we are setting ourselves up for failure if we remove the incentive to create new intellectual property. And I think that very much could happen in the digital age. And I'm hoping that librarians will still be on the side of doing the things that protect intellectual property rights so that creators of content will feel like it's worth their time to create content. So I hope all of that makes sense. I'm doing this a little fast today because, again, I have some things to do before I prepare to go to Wichita. But that's what I wanted to say there. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. alstonj@missouri.edu, alstonj@missouri.edu. Make sure you keep all criticisms of me fairly respectful. If you think I suck as a professor, I guess you can admit that to me via email, but you might want to phrase it in a slightly more positive way than Professor Austin, you're garbage. Okay, that is my time. You all have a great week. You are all doing fantastic, and I look forward to continued preparation for your careers as librarians or other information professionals. Toodles!